Welcome back to Face the Nation. I'm Margaret Brennan. We continue our conversation with former New York mayor and co-author of Climate of Hope, Michael Bloomberg. How do you assess EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt?
His policies are not good for the world. That to debunk science and walk away from it is just ridiculous. Even if you don't believe it, if there's a possibility that it's right, you have to take prophylactic actions to prevent a disaster. And what I do know is that a lot of kids go to the hospital with asthma attacks because we have a lot of junk we put in the air. A lot of people come down with stomach cancers because there's a lot of stuff that goes into the water. A lot of people's houses are being destroyed and they're getting killed in hurricanes and things like that.
It sounds like you're saying he's not doing the job that he should be doing.
I don't think there's any question about that. He was hired, his job is to protect the environment, and he has walked away 100% from that, saying the environment doesn't need protection, I'm going to try to protect jobs. That's not his job.
Should he be fired?
That's up to the president to decide. If he could get Scott Pruitt to change his policies, then he can keep him. But the issue is that what he's doing is very damaging to your health and your children's health and mine.
But he would say, and the administration would say, that criticisms like yours are just pure politics now.
If there's anybody that's making it a political issue, it's this administration. 99% of all scientists, after peer review, say that something is happening in the world. It's changing. Everybody that looks outside their window can see that we have less snow here and more snow there and bigger storms and a whole bunch of things that oceans are rising and things are changing, and you can't deny that.
At the DNC in 2016, you called Donald Trump a risky, reckless, and radical choice, and the country, you said, couldn't afford to make that mistake.
Did I say that?
It was a memorable quote. Has he done anything to make you reconsider that? Do you think he's doing a good job?
I think I would give him an incomplete grade. Some of the things that he's done, I don't agree with. The style of changing your mind every day and leaving your staffs out there to make embarrassing things that you don't back them up. And the turnover in the administration is really dangerous and worrisome, not fair to people. But, you know, to criticize him doesn't advance anything.
His compelling case was that he came from the world of business, as you did.
No, he didn't. He was a real estate developer. He didn't manage large numbers of people. He didn't run big organizations. He was, I gather, a reasonably successful real estate developer, which is just a different occupation. It's not really a business person.
And do you see, though, I mean, you're drawing a distinction there. Do you see some management issues then? When you say...
Oh, I don't think there's any question that...
the hiring, the firing, the...
Management is not something it's like skiing. You don't read a book on skiing and then go out and ski double black diamonds. Management is something you learn over a period of time, and you have to manage larger and larger groups of people and make more and more difficult decisions and live with those decisions as you go. This president does not have experience in running large organizations or facing a lot of the issues that he has to face. And the one time I talked to him after he got elected, my advice to him was get people, regardless of their political persuasion, who have expertise in each of these areas that you're not an expert on, and give them authority to go along with responsibility, and then let them do it even when there are things that you don't agree with. And when they make decisions that you don't necessarily agree with or that don't turn out to be the right decisions, you have to back them up. If you don't give people the confidence that you're going to have their backs, you're not going to get good people, and you're not going to keep them.
Now, you're an independent. You've been a Democrat. You've been a Republican.
I know something about partisan politics. I've been them all.
So do you see any candidates in any of those parties right now that you see embodying the kind of leadership you want to support and would support in 2020?
I think if you look back at history, it is such a long time from this point in this cycle until the election that I bet you 25 cents the candidate that gets the nomination isn't even mentioned today.
Because you're a numbers guy, what are the odds you'd put on you deciding to run?
Not very high. You know, look, I've got a chance.
Not very high, but not zero.
Well, if God said I'd appoint you, I think it'd be a great challenge, and you'd have to think long and hard. And you're physically able to do it. Do you think you can attract the right people? Because it's not going to be you; it's the staff that you're going to build that team that I talked about. But at the moment, I'm not running for president. I'm trying to do as good a job as I can. I'm interested in public education. I think the education system in our country is going in the wrong direction. We've got to find programs where people can get jobs. We have defense issues around the world. We have potential things that could damage or destroy our country. We've got to build alliances around the world and do those kinds of things. And I think I can, as a private citizen, help in some of those things. And that's what I want to do with my life.
It also sounds like a platform.
Well, anything you say could be a platform. I don't know that that's... do I think that the President of the United States should do those things? Of course I think the President of the United States should do those things, but he's not, or she's not the only one that can do those things.
New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg ruling out a run for office, sort of. Our full conversation will be available on facethenation.com. We'll be right back with John Dickerson, so stay with us. More than 1,500 people turned out at St. Martin's Episcopal Church in Houston to pay their respects to former First Lady Barbara Bush yesterday. 4 of the 5 former presidents attended, along with First Lady Melania Trump. But for a woman who was the wife of one president and the mother of another, the funeral was very much a family affair, as Mrs. Bush's 5 children, 17 grandchildren, and 7 great-grandchildren played prominent roles in the service. Granddaughters gave tribute.
Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all.
Grandsons acted as pallbearers. And second son, Jeb Bush, delivered the eulogy.
Mom got us through our difficult times with consistent, take it to the bank, unconditional, but tough love. She called her style a benevolent dictatorship, but honestly, it wasn't always benevolent. We learned to strive to be genuine and authentic by the best role model in the world. Her authentic plastic pearls, her not culling her hair. By the way, she was beautiful till the day she died.
Barbara Bush died Tuesday at the age of 92. She and President George H.W. Bush were married for 73 years. For more on former First Lady Barbara Bush and a broader look at the presidency, we knew who to call. John Dickerson is now the co-anchor of CBS This Morning and the author of this month's cover story in The Atlantic magazine, How the Presidency Became Impossible. Good to have you back on a very familiar set, John.
Thank you very much. I admire watching you, Margaret, so it's great to be on.
Oh, thank you. George and Barbara Bush, they had the longest marriage in presidential history.
Yeah, and that's what I think about when I think about Barbara Bush. They say about the spouses of people who serve in the military, they are the backbone of the military. And that emotional relationship for 73 years, she was the backbone to the family dedicated to public service. It started, as you say, 73 years ago. Her fiance went off to war. They wrote constant letters to each other, and then for a month they just stopped. She didn't know what happened. Then he was shot down. For 3 days, she didn't know whether he'd lived or died. That's the beginning of an emotional roller coaster of being connected to someone who's dedicated their life to their country. And she had to go through all of that. And then watching him get abused in public and knowing how painful that is and not being able to do anything about it. Anybody who's a spouse who watches their spouse get abused in public and can't do anything knows what that pain is like. Now multiply that by 3, because she had 2 sons in politics too. That dedication throughout her whole life to that public service, that is where dedication to family becomes dedication to country.
Was it right for President Trump not to attend the funeral?
Well, I think I don't know, right or wrong. We certainly know that he attacked the Bush family during the campaign, said that George W. Bush lied the country into the Iraq War, attacked them both specifically and a lot of the things they stood up for. So I think Melania Trump was in keeping with the continuity of a long presidency, but I think you could have gotten into something maybe a little bit more bitter if he had attended. So you don't want to do anything to take away from that extraordinary life and the celebration of it. And so I think it worked out well.
This was an extraordinary read in The Atlantic, your piece. You've been working on it for quite some time. You write, Americans need their president to succeed, but the presidency has set him up for failure. What do you mean?
Well, so let's make a general point. What's happened to the presidency is it's gotten out of shape. So people may think we're about to talk about this specific president, but let's go back to President Polk. The 11th president, Sarah Polk, his wife, had them play Hail to the Chief when he walked in the room because they were worried people wouldn't recognize him and know who he was.
I love that anecdote.
Now we have a presidency who's basically the most famous person on the globe, on the planet. So that is not the way the framers intended it. And instead of not noticing the president, we are whipsawed by the president's behavior in anything he does or anything we notice. And you notice I'm making a distinction between the president and the presidency. If you think of the presidency, it's an enormous ship. There is a captain of that ship, and we spend a lot of time talking about him, or someday, one day, her, and it is fitting and proper that we do so. But the ship itself has taken on barnacles. Some people want the ship to act like a kayak, some people want it to act like a barge. And all of those expectations we have about the ship of the presidency reflect on our aspirations for the country and the way we think about the captain of that ship.
And when did that departure happen, that evolution of the presidency?
It depends on where you want to put down the needle on the record. You can think in terms of national security. After 9/11, something changed. It was no longer about big, slow-moving armies. It was about threats that could come through the mail, that could come through email, that could disrupt the country by a few people plotting together to use planes to fly into a building. That changed what a president had to keep his eye on. George W. Bush, after that attack, in his briefings in the morning with the presidential daily brief, he went through threat by threat by threat. Well, if you do that, your whole day is taken up by threats. That focus on the national security piece is one piece. The rise of primaries and television has turned the presidency into a kind of performance show. That was not the founders' intent. The founders didn't want presidents to even run for the office for fear that grubbing for votes would get in the way of clear reason to adjudicate the issues of the day. Well, now we have a reality show president. We see how that has changed. Those are just, and then, of course, the rise of partisanship. Some people are even going to look at raising this question and say, well, this is an attack on Trump, or this is an effort to make excuses for him. We can't see any question, no matter how much we try to step back, outside of that partisan lens, and that partisanship has hurt the presidency and it's hurt Congress.
Well, one of the frustrations with the presidency and some of what you've talked about came up in this past election. And the solution being offered was, let's look to the private sector, that a businessman, a CEO could really take charge. But you puncture that idea.
Well, that's right, because they're not the same job. And, and Michael Bloomberg, in that excellent interview you had with him, explained the differences in the job. There are a certain set of attributes for the presidency. One of them is recognizing that you don't know everything you don't know. And that's what Michael Bloomberg is talking about. A lot of people who've been successful in business have been successful and are sometimes blind to what they don't know. And so there's Gautam Mukunda at Harvard has done a careful study of this. And the way CEOs are elevated through a company, there's a filtering process. Through the presidency, that same filtering process doesn't exist for the job we're electing people to actually go to. And so the idea that a business person can come in is just, it's not consistent with the actual job they have to perform.
And there's no easy solution.
There's no easy solution. And we don't, in the press and in the public, allow presidents to do things. We don't allow them to make mistakes. We don't allow them to change their mind, all of which are part of best practices in any other large organization. So there aren't even easy solutions, and we don't provide a road to those solutions in the way we both cover the presidency and in the way, as partisans, we react to the behavior of individual presidents.
It's a great read, John. Thank you. So good to have you
Thanks,
back
Margaret.
here.
Take care.
We'll be back in a moment. And now for some political analysis. Mark Landler is a White House correspondent at the New York Times. Rachel Bade covers Congress for Politico, and she's a CNN political analyst. And Mike Allen is a co-founder of Axios. Welcome to Face the Nation, all of you. Mike, there were a number of legal developments this week as they relate to the president. You had Rudy Giuliani joining the president's legal team. Reports that the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein told the president he personally wasn't the target of an investigation. Then you saw all of these tweets about the former FBI director and the president's personal attorney, Michael Cohen, and the president saying, I don't expect him to flip. Which headline do we focus on, and what do they actually mean?
Well, and the best part is all that was like Thursday afternoon. That was like a couple of hours. Here's what's important to know is that the president is really rattled by what's going on up in New York.
With Michael Cohen.
Not only because of what his personal lawyer knows, but because they don't exactly know like what has been taken, like what recordings have been taken, what electronic records have been taken. And so you see the president, as he does when he's backed into a corner or is rattled, acting out. And what does he want? He wants someone who's going to be on TV defending him. So that's why you have Rudy Giuliani, who's not known for of all the things he's great at. He's not known as a great in-court litigator, which is what the president needs, but he's comfort food for the president. He was someone who was there during the campaign, and when the president flicks on the tube, he'll be taking his side.
And he's very familiar with the Southern District of New York, where this case is progressing, and with Robert Mueller, the special counsel.
And he's promising a quick end, which is what the president wants. His initial legal team did that. And once again, Rudy Giuliani going in saying, I can make this deal, I can shorten this. That is exactly what a special counsel doesn't do. There's no sign of the way that Robert Mueller has conducted this investigation that he's in the market for a deal.
Rachel, there's all this talk about the potential of legislation to protect the special counsel, yet it looks like it would go nowhere. You can't get the floor time, and the president's unlikely to sign off on it anyhow. So is this needed? Is this just symbolic? Why is Congress even talking about it?
The chatter has certainly crescendoed in recent days with the president's continued attacks on Comey, personal knocks on the special counsel, calling it illegitimate because some of Comey memos, he said, were leaked, they were confidential, and therefore, the special counsel is illegitimate and shouldn't be around, he's trying to argue. Now, of course, every Democrat and most Republicans will disagree with that completely. But yeah, there's a lot of talk right now about whether they need to pass legislation to protect the special counsel, to make sure the president doesn't move to fire him just a few days after the White House basically said they think the president does have this authority. Now, from talking to Republican leaders, I can tell you that's just not going to happen. I mean, yes, there are a new group, a new faction of Republicans who are joining Democrats and signing these bipartisan bills. But Majority Leader Mitch McConnell noted, I control the floor, and this isn't coming to the floor. Speaker Paul Ryan has said many times he doesn't think the president is going to fire Mueller, and so he's just not going to put that on the floor when it could divide the party in a very tough re-election battle to keep the House.
Mark, there was also sort of a battle being played out in the public eye this week within the administration. Nikki Haley, the UN ambassador, was on this show, couldn't have been more definitive or clear in the timing and the specific rollout of Russia sanctions, and then the White House said she was confused. What happened, and where are the sanctions?
Well, I think what happened here is that some people were ready to throw Nikki Haley under the bus. Larry Kudlow down in Florida during the week said that maybe she was a little bit confused. Other officials suggested she was out of the loop, that there'd been subsequent meetings she wasn't included in. She then answered rather authoritatively, I was not confused. I think that was actually a very interesting blow by a woman in the president's cabinet to stake her ground, and I think it's made a big impression. Now, the question is, what does it mean for her relationship with the president going forward? It was a pretty strong stand for her to take. The president has said there may still be sanctions in the future. He's made the point that no one's been tougher on Russia than Donald J. Trump. Which, of course, is a highly debatable point. The administration has, in fact, done several things on the sanctions front. The president has continued to show his sort of habitual inability to be critical of Vladimir Putin himself. So you see this odd disjunction, and to some extent, I think Nikki Haley fell into that gap between some of the policy things the administration is doing and the rhetoric of the president that continues to be somewhat out of sync with his own administration.
A lot of people said that, and it sounds like Nikki Haley felt that the White House really undercut her, and it would be harder for her to do her job at the UN when world leaders, can't take her at her word that she's speaking for the president. But I actually think her response to that really, the assertive response, the aggressive response to stand up for herself really helped her. And this is a woman that Republicans love. She's got a lot of respect from Democrats as well. I think that helped her in the long run. This is somebody who could potentially run for president. President Trump apparently sees her as a threat. So it's a really interesting exchange.
And Margaret, Axios reporting shows that when she was on your show, and congratulations on the global headline that she made right here on Face the Nation, she was reflecting where the administration was. She was not freelancing, as you know. Everyone around this table knows her. But it's the occupational hazard of being a top official of the Trump administration. It may well be that he saw it on TV and he didn't want her announcing it. And you put that in the context of this very important Washington story this week talking about the president as the reluctant hawk on Russia. And this is the split that you were just talking about the policymakers and the president, that every time the administration has pushed him to be talking tough on Russia, he either dialed it back or was reluctant or complained later.
Rachel, Iraq war veteran and Senator Tammy Duckworth made history not only for giving birth as a senator, but bringing her 10-day-old daughter onto the floor of the Senate this week. That required a big change in rules. How difficult was it to get that through?
Well, how many years did it take? Decades. So, I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of progress with women in politics this year. I mean, the Me Too movement has launched a lot of candidates, female candidates, to run for office. Historic numbers. On Capitol Hill in recent months, we've seen a lot of talk about sexual harassment and reforming the system to make sure women are protected and not silenced and can come forward and have the support they need. But this is a more practical thing. You know, you have a mother in the Senate. She can't leave her baby with staffers. That's against the rules. It looks like babysitting, pretty much, free babysitting. So she's got to take her baby with her, and she wants to vote on the floor. And so they've got to change these rules to make the Senate more welcoming for women, as there's more and more female senators.
Mark, I want to ask you about this state visit that's about to happen. France's president flying here for the first state visit of the Trump administration. Not far behind him, Chancellor Angela Merkel. What is the big ask that they are coming to Washington with?
Well, I think Emmanuel Macron will probably make a strong and potentially last-ditch case to President Trump not to rip up the Iran nuclear deal. Macron, as you know, has sort of developed a very strong personal rapport with the president, but it hasn't actually translated into any major achievements. He tried to talk him out of pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. That didn't work. The president faces this deadline of May 12th in deciding whether he's really going to walk away from the Iran deal. He's been involved in this negotiation with the Europeans. They're trying desperately to come up with a formula that could somehow persuade the president to stick with the deal. I think Emmanuel Macron will draw heavily on this sense of rapport to say, Mr. President, we've gone some distance toward meeting your concerns. Stick with it, stick with the deal. You talked to Javad Zarif a few minutes ago on the show, and he made the point that Iran is not willing to change its view toward the deal. So it'll be very interesting to watch how that plays out.
It will. High stakes. Thank you, all of you.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day. We will be right back. That's it for us today. It has been another busy week here at Face the Nation. Thank you all for watching this Sunday. And until next week, I'm Margaret Brennan.